Ready? Start again. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
What? You're frame from the bell. Yeah. I haven't broken that handle yet. I'm trying. We'll start this morning with the pledge, please.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Gary, you wanna?
Yes, unless Tom would like to do it. You did a great job while it's on. So, but I guess not.
No, well, go right ahead.
Okay, are you sure?
We don't want to steal your hat.
You just want to show up. Which one?
Yeah.
Which one? Okay. Well, I've got a $10 bill here that I'm gonna hold in abeyance on something that I asked somebody to do. So let's see if they do it. If they don't, the $10 is mine, or if they, whatever, we'll just leave it at that. I am happy to be back among you guys. For some reason, it's the exact same time, but 8 o'clock just sounds a little bit different than 7 o'clock. I don't know why. I kept thinking you. Well, exactly. Yeah, that's it. So I'm glad to be back with you guys. It was a nice, very relaxing vacation. And now we're going to go to the farm so I can quote relax.
How long is your relaxed list?
In my own head, probably to the floor from here. So.
Go to the farm.
Mary Kay. 2 words. Okay. Oh, you probably don't remember dealing with her as much as me because you were probably. So anyway, there's my happy bucks. Oh, I did owe a couple of fines and I can't find my badge, so I think it's in my briefcase because it's been too long to chat the last time. Anybody else have any happy bucks this morning? All right. Oh, wait a minute. Howard's closer. Okay, I'll get to you in a second, Doc. Okay.
All right, there's some for being here, and here's some happy bucks because 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock. When you retire, you can do what you want to.
No, I said, you got used to it yet. So, okay. Doc?
No.
This doc, then that doc.
All right.
We just got a call from California last night. With a great grandparent. Was
it a lot of work?
Yeah, it seemed like they were always all the time and say, well, it was close. And then, well, we kids the way, you know, and it's just bizarre. The whole family's wondering, what's going to happen?
You didn't see on Zoom.
Everything's going on.
Happy or sad? Happy, my son Andy came over for dinner last night. The sad part is he has to go to Hawaii for a week on Friday. So, you know, I feel
Somebody has to, right?
Hawaii weather here.
I'm happy. My kids are both in town for Christmas, and Jane and her fiance are heading to our family dining store today. I don't know, engagement ring or wedding ring or something. But it's nice to see them both, see all of them. And we're having our Christmas tonight, so fiance's got to head over to his parents' house in Topeka tomorrow.
Wild guess their timeline and all.
No. Okay. They're in Seattle, I've heard.
You've heard that?
Yes, ma'am, thank you.
I am happy to be back after a couple of weeks. Bob and I had a great trip out to Tucson where my two sisters and their husbands and I flew all together. So that was the first time in 4 years we really enjoyed it.
For 2 weeks.
No, we were only together together for about 4 days. Yeah, that's about the good.
That's why it was a good trip.
But we just did some traveling after that. We drove.
Anybody else? All over the place. I got two, my son will be in for Christmas, happy about that, and my early Christmas present arrived, my new electric smoker, so. You know, it'll be a good weekend, I'm not sure which one I'm more happy about.
Because, honestly, always does.
All right.
Yeah, we had a really nice, Sunday evening dinner with our two grandkids. Now that the only adults, it was a really nice time. And they're nice, they were nice.
Sure.
I find we're not wearing my badge, and I went over there to get my badge. And got this directed somewhere. I don't.
Yeah.
Happy to be back. And done this last week.
Okay. Anybody back here? All right. Okay.
Nope.
Okay.
Happy Krazl here as our guest speaker, and I'm heading out Christmas morning, Christmas Eve morning.
Florida, get you down there.
I asked both kids why they went north and stayed north.
And while I have the floor, I'm going to be a little self-serving here. Tom, as if I remember correctly, agreed to be sergeant at arms next year. Yeah. Okay, very good. We still need a president-elect, and we still need a secretary for next year. And as you know, secretary moves into president-elect for the following year, and president-elect goes for this year. And if you agree to be either the secretary or the president-elect, no, not president-elect.
President-elect will be president the following.
So the secretary, you get an all most expense-paid trip to Jefferson City.
Actually, no, it's the other way
So
around. The
appealing.
secretary is the president-elect and the president.
Well, it's the Buckets and two.
Right.
Depends on which
So the first person to agree the secretary or president-elect will get to go to Jefferson City and stay in the wonderful, I mean, this is the wonderful Capital City Plaza Hotel. And if you want to,
They did get new elevators, by the way, from what I read.
I was gonna just say that if you want to do stairs, it's the best place to go. They got two elevators and they're slower than all get out. And it's quicker to go down the stairs or, well,
Unless you're
unless you're at the top.
So Sergeant Arm doesn't make that transition, it could make the transition.
Good, that's true.
You could be all three hats too.
I'm
Tom.
trying
It's
to
like Jerry.
be a club president in every decade of since my fourth.
I think that would be great. I think that would be wonderful to have work. If you do that, I'll pay for a plane. Tom Green, the only club president in every decade that he's been in Rotary.
And just remember, after I pass away, I want to have a cool room, bonfire with all the Rotary flags.
Oh, yeah. Wasn't sure where you were going with that one. Yeah, you know,
We're just burning the flags.
Yeah.
I don't believe it's St. Louis Green Story. Yeah, right.
Okay. No takers? Okay.
Not in the Irish
So I would take it.
But that wouldn't be fair to all concerned.
Oh, certainly it would be. Because we've been-
Although when there was one summer I was the president more than the president was up with.
So, there you go. So. We can zoom.
No way. No way.
I was gonna say, Dave, on that can relate to that. Being president more than the president.
Yeah.
At least I would have been secretary more than the secretary. The secretary did get in and upload I uploaded something. on DAC TV, and I was shocked that I could do that. But I tried once before. and it wouldn't work.
I did say I would be acting secretary, but I had no desire to move back. So, you know, I know, I'll be acting secretary, but not, I'll just stay put in that role. Kind of like Jill did the 1 year.
And in that case, if you really want to go to Jefferson City, you're the first one to speak. No.
She's probably in charge of something. Not this year. I am off that committee and happy. Yeah, okay.
Told you, it's the buck.
Oh, I'm beyond, trust me, that's worth more than a buck.
Thanks, well.
All right. Well, with us is my good friend Steve Krazl. He has a nice presentation he put together. Steve's been with us before. I don't remember how long ago it's been, but 2 years ago. Yeah. I go to every few years, in here for a program. If we met a little later in the day, he'd probably join us, but, floor is yours.
Well, thank you guys for having me. Do I need to use the mic?
No.
Okay.
Everybody's online.
So, again, and I don't need to face this way, but my name is Steve Krazl. I'm a residential loan officer. I've been in the mortgage industry for about 25 years. And so I've kind of done a lot of things, just about everything in the industry over time. A loan officer, a manager, kind of wearing all hats. And I appreciate you guys having me here today. I'm trying to face this way, but look at you guys. So when Mitch asked me to present you guys, I spent a lot of time thinking about what you might want to hear and what your questions might be, and I don't really know. What I want to do is present a little bit of information, and it's a very fluid thing. So if you have questions, or I'm going to try to fill in some additional information, but don't hesitate to ask questions, or if there's certain things you're really looking to find out or get a thought on, let me know. I just kind of thought I would start today talking about the housing market and the mortgage industry. You know, what's economically been going on over the last, I started off, I just called it past, present, and future. So what, are there any questions before I start that you'd like to make sure I touch on today? Okay, when you think about mortgage and housing, one thing I'm sure everybody knows is how much of a boom we've had over the last couple of years. When we started, you started to look at what exactly has, okay, too much. I'm missing a slide there, so I'm not.
Fastest we, hang on.
Yeah.
Set back up. There we go.
Okay, so I'm still missing the slide, so it didn't make it over, that's okay. So in April of 2020, if you would ask the economists and the economic people what lies ahead, most of them would think there's a very, very strong likelihood of some kind of housing downturn. And that was because unemployment was in an 80-year high, highest since the Great Depression, actually. We had 7.2 million people in forbearance in the United States. Does everybody know what a forbearance is on a mortgage? So forbearance, and it's a term also used for student loans. If there is a situation and there's been a clause for to be able to get a forbearance in a deed of trust forever. But a forbearance is when you have an emergency situation, you get hurt at work, you get something happen that's a kind of a one-time emergency thing, you can go to your lender, you can tell them what the situation is, and on a case-by-case basis, they can allow you to skip payments without affecting your credit. Okay, so they can typically, they will give borrowers 90 days no payments. They take it's not a big gift, it's they take that principal and put it on the end of the loan while I'm holding on. And as we hit the COVID slowdown.
The interest continues.
The interest continues, yeah. There's no, it's just a matter of it allows you to have a little bit of relief without it hurting credit. As we hit COVID and we had all the layoffs and the people losing their jobs and unemployment rate so high, forbearances became much easier to get. Typically, prior to COVID, you had to show that you had that crisis situation. Once COVID hit and the economy became so distressed, all you had to do was act. And not only did they give you 90 days, but they would do it for further. They would do it for 180 days. They would do it, you know. And while I'm talking about forbearance, there's still a lot of people in a forbearance, nowhere near like there used to be. Currently, we're at still about 1 million people across the country in forbearance. But there's 3 options when somebody gets out of forbearance to move forward. They can A, pay a lump sum and pay the payments that they've missed. They can pay that back all at once and then move forward. B, they can take those payments, divide them up over the rest of the term. The lender can adjust the payment monthly. Or C, they can take that and put it on the end of the loan. It's really a modification. Well, guess what? During a forbearance, that lender still has to make payments to the secondary market on that loan. So they're out money. So what they typically will do is offer, the first thing they do to people who have had a forbearance, they'll give them option 1, first and foremost. They'll say, here's what we need you to do. We need you to pay this lump sum. Well, the problem is, if you're in a forbearance and you're trying to dig out, most people don't have a lump sum to pay. And lenders cannot require you to. So this is kind of why I'm telling you guys, help spread the word. All you have to do is say, guys, that's not going to work for me. I need either option 2 or better yet, option 3. And they will always allow you, they have to legally allow you those options. So if you haven't known anybody that's in a forbearance or has had one, and they are getting ready to come out of it, let them know. They're having the options. The lenders don't typically tell them about 2 and 3 unless you just tell them I can't do that. Okay, but anyway, so that's a forbearance. Right now, as I mentioned, there's a little bit under 1 million. So what a lot of people were concerned about, and we'll talk more about this in a minute, is as the recovery kind of moves forward, 7.2 million in forbearance, would those convert over to foreclosure? Well, that hasn't happened. The foreclosure rates have not jumped up. But the other thing that really potentially caused the thoughts of a mortgage and a real estate industry downturn was the fact that with COVID and with shutdowns, really there are a lot of states out there were not allowing realtors to show homes. You could not show up and go through a home like you used to. In the state of Missouri, in our metro area, you could always go and do it for the most part, but they were so highly restricted on how to do it, it made it much tougher. So that was, so it made a lot of sense. That was the prediction. That's not how it played out. And I am missing several slides here. I don't know what happened with them, but maybe I don't know. But since August of 2020, home prices are up about 19%. Crazy, you've seen escalation. It's greater than any period since the 2008 housing crisis, which was leading up to that housing crisis. And so 07 and 08, we had the big mortgage bubble burst that you heard a lot about. That was caused by a lot of different things that aren't present now. Leading up to that, a lot of lenders had a side division called a subprime division. And so whether it was no longer around, but a bank called, a lender called Countrywide, you remember Countrywide? Yeah. They had a huge subprime division that later got pushed onto Bank of America, and they were forced to take it over, and then Bank of America got blamed for having it. It's kind of funny, but the way it played out. And they were doing loans that didn't make sense. They were doing loans if you had good credit, you could just state your income and you didn't have to prove your income, which was very, very popular in California, where the price of homes way outpaced the difference between price of homes here and there, way outpaced the level of income difference between here. They allowed mortgages to go over 100% of the value of homes. So there's a lot of things that are not present now. None of those things are occurring in the market now. So that's why there has not been any kind of bubble that we've seen. What's causing the current housing boom? Interest rates have been extremely low for an extended period of time. When I started in this industry, the highest I remember them being, when I first started, they were right about 9%. And so being in the industry as they work their way down is amazing. And people are very spoiled now thinking that a 4% interest rate is extremely high. You know, as they came down, we got into under 6 and we thought it was amazing. And, you know, one of the things that I learned early on is you don't predict as a loan officer. If I could predict, my crystal ball would be, you know, I'd be able to go out in Vegas and do a lot of things to retire much earlier. So I've never predicted, but as things came down, we thought, wow, that's incredible. Got them 5.5, got to 5%, and we always thought they were just crazy. And getting down to where we are, you know, over the past 1.5 years, 2 years, we've been as low as 2.75, right in that range on a 30-year fixed mortgage. So incredibly low interest rates. What that does is very strongly, you know, give people a lot more buying power. You can get, while people are buying more expensive homes, well, that person has X job and you know kind of a salary range for that job, how are they affording that house? Used to be that they would just state their income. Now they're not having to do that because the payments are lower, because the interest rates are lower. So it's giving them much more affordability. One of the other things that really caused the housing boom, people are much less specific on where they have to live because through COVID, so many people are working from home. You know, on the home office, you don't have to, you work remotely. And so far, a lot of companies have stuck with that. They haven't got away from that. And so people are living much further out than they used to from corporate headquarters or, you know, wherever the drive is taking them. So that's expanded the markets. The other thing, millennials are buying their first home. And the 5-year range of the biggest group of millennials are at or approaching 30 years old, which is kind of the age where a lot of people buy their first home. And that's 1989, born in 89 to 93. So they're hitting the market. So that's been one of the biggest things pushing the housing boom. And then the other thing that's pushed escalation has been the fact that the lack of inventory in the market. We're at a 40-year low of inventory on the market. This was the case before COVID, and it's not gotten any better. But because of that, everybody scrambles for a house as soon as it goes on the market. You have 10 people, 15 people make offers on houses. They make offers that will say, well, my bid will take, I'm offering this, but my final offer will be $10,000 more than your highest offer. And they'll put a cap on it maybe, or things like that. A lot of realtors are suggesting to buyers that they waive a lot of the protections, the inspections and appraisals and things like that, which is really a dangerous situation because they're kind of hanging them out to dry, but it's what's happening. So that's what's led to what is going on and what has gone on in the housing market. So.
You mentioned about interest rates when we bought our house in '84, right over here in the Overland Heights.
Yeah.
We got a good interest rate, and I want to reemphasize that.
I know where you're going.
A good interest rate of 13.9%.
Yeah.
That was a good interest rate.
In 1981, it was
First one.
17%.
Yeah.
I got
So-
17 right now in 81.
Yeah.
So that 9 that you were quoting looked really good.
Right,
at that
right.
point, you know?
One of my mentors, one of my people that taught me so much, he's been gone for a while now, but he used to always tell me about the fact that interest rates at a certain point, late 70s, early 80s, got to a high of 18%. Every lender had 18%, and that's where it was capped. What did change is how many points you had to add to pay that. The point is 1% of the loan. Pay 1 point, so $100,000 loan, $1,000 is a point. And so it was all about the only thing that changed is how many points you had to pay on top of the interest rate at the time. So yeah, you remember those times, and it tells you how spoiled everybody is now. There's an awful lot of loan officers in the industry that have been here for 10 years that don't understand what it's like to have interest rates over 5%. They're paying. So,
The prime rate.
yeah.
Do they pay points anymore?
No, no, points are not charged in most situations. And as we talk about points, so one of the things that used to happen a lot is lenders always want to look better than the other person, so you come and do business with them instead of the other person. And so what they'll do is advertise extremely low rates better than everybody else. And then what they don't tell you is, it's much more, used to be much more prevalent, but how many points you have to pay to buy that rate down? Because the way an interest rate works, it's kind of like when you go to a grocery store and you buy a loaf of bread. That store gets that bread for a certain price. And to cover their overhead and what they need to make on it, they sell it for a certain price. So that's, I guess, what we would call par pricing for our industry. If I charge more for that loaf of bread or the interest rate, it creates a pool of money. And that pool of money used to always go towards that lender's extra profit. Now, you can still do that, and it's called premium pricing. And what I can then now do is take that extra money and pay some of those costs, the closing costs for that borrower. So you still see it occasionally in situations where people have less cash, and sometimes it makes a lot of sense to do that way. Because if you have limited cash available, you don't want to spend it all getting in the house and then have a hot water heater go out that you can't fix. So there's, everything that's ever come along in the mortgage industry, for the most part, not everything, but most of these programs and things that happen were for a specific situation that were then taken and abused and put in the wrong situation. One of them back in 07 and 08 was the interest-only loan. The interest-only loan, you may have heard a lot about, but what it is over the first 10 years of the loan, all you pay is interest. So the principal doesn't go down. And it sounds like a bad thing, but what it was set for was extremely high income borrowers that needed the tax write-off every year and wanted to keep it high. So that was what they were created for. What they turned into is people realized, or some lenders realized, that allows people to, because the payment's lower, you're not paying principal, you can qualify for more homes. And the problem is that when you get to a certain point in that loan, it fully amortizes and now your payment jumps. So that was one of the downfalls. So what comes next? This is the gray area. Prices can't continue to grow up at this rate forever. It's not feasible. Why is it not feasible? It's right now the increase in real estate prices is way outperforming the level of the growth of income. So what's the forecast? So again, a gray area. These are just three out there in the market that are some of the leading predictors. Zillow, everybody's heard of Zillow, predicts that housing prices will still grow at another 14% next year. CoreLogic 2%, Fannie Mae at 8%. Who's CoreLogic? CoreLogic is they're a provider of credit batching. So you've heard of Experian, TransUnion, Equifax. Those are the three reporting agencies. CoreLogic is one that batches that together for the mortgage industry. And they do some economic predicting. So they put the three together and tell you what the average is. Well, they batch them, and when a lender pulls a credit report, it's called a merge file. So you'll see your different liabilities, your credit cards, and it will show maybe all three of them reported that certain liability, maybe only two of them found it. So you'll see it that way. But each of the models are a little bit different, and they are a little bit different predictors. And that's why for lenders, what we use is the median score of the three when we price. The CoreLogic is the one that batches that together, does a lot of analysis on the industry, because credit scores were created to predict potential future payments based on past performance, which is one of the reasons, and it's kind of a side thing, but one of the reasons why when somebody goes and pays off all the credit cards, let's say, the next day their score doesn't jump up if they've had late payment, because it's a predictor based on past performance, not a snapshot of this exact second. That makes sense? So.
And that's on top of the 19% that just happened?
It would be, yes, that's another 14 or 2%, but again, my point here is how big of a disparity there is for the projection. So
What was it last year?
19.
No, I mean, what was the
Predictions? Well, that goes back to how I started. The predictions were much more conservative because most of the experts thought there would be a little bit of a downturn. Because,
More logic was mine.
you know, I didn't pull those numbers, but they probably were. They probably all were predicting that. You know, again, because when COVID hit, you had unemployment high, you had the forbearances high, and you had people that couldn't get out in the market and buy. What really happened is we had maybe 60 days where people stopped buying for a little while, and then they jumped right back in because there was so much prior to COVID. There was already quite a bit of pin-up buyers because of lack of inventory already. It's not a new. Yep, exactly, and that's part of what we'll talk about. One of the things that has a lot of bearing on what this coming year is going to do and how things will look is mortgage rates. What are rates going to do? So one of the larger indicators on mortgage rates and what they'll do is inflation. Inflation is the big enemy of mortgage interest rates. And if inflation is up, rates are up. And so that's the gray area. What we do know is, and somebody mentioned it, the Federal Reserve is they're very likely, we've already stated that they're going to raise the short-term rates at least once in 2022, and sometimes they adjust as they go. So when they adjust short-term rates, which is the overnight lending rate, it's not a direct correlation to mortgage rates, but it's a trickle effect. Okay, because the mortgage rates are based on the long-term treasury, not the short-term. So that's one thing. The other thing that they announced actually just last week, something that you alluded to, they're going to double the pace of the tapering down of their purchasing of bonds. So what that means is when we started this economic crisis, the Federal Reserve jumped in and started buying bonds in bulk to keep the market and the rates low, to stimulate the market. It was never a long-term solution. It was just a temporary way to help things out. So they always intended to back away from doing that. They just announced last week that they're going to double the pace of how quickly they're going to stop doing it. So, you know, it's one of those natural things in the market. But here's the surprising thing: when they announced it, everybody thought, or a lot of people thought, rates would jump up that day. You know, on that given day or the next day. It didn't happen. Why is that? The Federal Reserve always they're very predictable within the next following couple of weeks of what they're going to do. They don't surprise people very often. When you see big jumps in the markets, because they surprise people. But they had really laid out that they were already planning that, so it had already been priced in the market slowly. So mortgage rates are the big question. And again, what's the prediction on what rates are going to do? So as after we talked about where they've been, these are their predictions for the coming year from some of the leading economists out there. The high end is an average of 4%. The low is keeping it down probably about 3 1/4. So again, there's a lot of disparity, but even at the high end, we're talking about 4%. So one of the people that I spend a lot of time listening to is a guy named Bill Emmons with the St. Louis Federal Reserve. And while his predictions have never been, nothing's perfect, he's been very, very informative and very close over the years. And what he said several years ago is that, you know, the 3.5, 3.75, right in that range that we're in now is just the new normal. So will we ever get up to 9, 10%? There's a good chance we won't. It's hard to say never, but in the foreseeable future. So when you look at that, again, when you're talking about what's the guess for what rates are going to do, and what the real estate growth is going to do, that's why there's a disparity. That's one of the biggest disparities, because what we're looking at, and if I skip another one, looking ahead, what we're most likely to see is home prices will not be falling. They won't be falling. They just won't be growing as fast. Why won't they be falling? Again, there's more than likely no bubble. In 07 and 08, there was a bubble. And what that did was, because unemployment shot up and people who normally made their payments on time, a lot of people got foreclosed on. Foreclosures were way up. And how that changed the market was, if I was selling my house, okay, and I was selling it at normal market price, and somebody got foreclosed on across the street, they were selling, but they were selling for quite a bit less because that lender was just trying to get what they needed to pay off that mortgage back. And a foreclosure and a regular sale used to be at that given time, leading up to that, they were two different buyers, because foreclosures were typically houses that were very distressed. They'd been rental properties or run down. So somebody was buying a distressed property, and that was a whole different buyer than was coming to look at my house. Well, at that point, when you just had people that lost their jobs or had economic distress, their houses were maintained, they were in good condition. So they were very comparable to my house. It was just a third less price. So that's what pushed the prices down at the time and pushed the values down. So if we don't see a foreclosure bubble, which no one is predicting at this point, there's no reason to think that the housing prices will fall. Make sense? Home prices will still grow. The U.S. rate of home price growth is finally, we had 16 months in a row where the pricing went up. Last month was the first month in 16 months where it did not. So it stayed pretty low. So there are signs of that. Now, keeping in mind, this is all very fluid. And again, that's because of what? Higher interest rates. Again, we talked about what's really higher interest rate. Now, when you're talking about a $200,000 loan and you're talking about a 0.5% in interest rate, you're talking about a substantially higher payment. You know, you're talking about probably $50 to $60 a month higher in payment than if you have that 0.5% lower, maybe a little bit more, but that tells you about your buying power. Inflation is kind of the biggest thing out there. And that's anybody's guess. We have the issues with supply and demand, and everybody sees the cargo ships out in the ocean waiting to be unloaded, and how long that'll go on. Nobody can predict another wave of COVID and what's going to happen to that. So there's a lot of unknowns. The inventory is, again, the biggest thing that we know is more than likely a constant. So here is one of the predictions, this is through realtor.com, that they're predicting for 2022. They're expecting a growth of about 6.6%. Now, here's one thing I point out is if you look on the bottom, the right, average rents are actually growing at a higher pace than what real estate is, and what is predicted to grow at. Average rents are expected to go up about 7.1%. So what that tells people is obviously you're much better off buying than renting for that purpose alone, besides the fact that when you own, you build equity and you could have ownership and all of those things that we all know. But when the monthly payments on a rental are jumping higher than the payments on a home ownership, it obviously makes more sense and throws more people into the purchase market. So they've got a lot of predictions there. Here's again Fannie Mae's forecast for housing starts. Now this was as of October 21st or October of this year for predictions for next year. And again, these are very fluid. So even I thought maybe I wouldn't use this, but I didn't have time to go back and find the most recent, which would have been November. But they're expecting total housing starts to be down 1.3%. Total home sales down, sale of total home sale or of total homes down 3.5 or 3.4%. New single family homes up 13%, and existing single family and condo sales down 5.6%. Who knows? Who knows? What we can say is that the Fannie Mae also has a statistic, and again, I don't know where they came up with it, but they are what they state is that the United States is underbuilt by about 4 million homes across the United States. So that tells you that if we're underbuilt, that it's still going to be a very, very robust market. So opinions are all over the place. What they are expecting is that it'll be another, real estate and the mortgage industry will continue to be strong. How strong is anybody's guess, because of inflation really is the biggest thing. One of the things that I don't have in this PowerPoint, but I'll talk a little bit about, because I know you guys are as part of a Rotary, are very involved with community and that kind of thing. One of the things that I do a lot of, and we do a lot at my company specifically, is renovation lending. Renovation lending is always a good thing, but it's more important now than at other times. What it does is allow somebody to go in, buy a home that's distressed, finance the improvements, whether they're structural or if it's just a kitchen and a bathroom that need to be updated. It allows them to buy in a community where there's a lack of inventory of the new homes that are all ready to move into, keep their roots where they're at, and get the house that they want at the end of the day. So it's something to keep in mind, because it's growing more, because the houses that are sitting on the market a while are the ones that need the update. But people haven't updated, since the mid 80s or mid 70s. They just, and so if you have people looking, just take a look at those, because you can finance in those improvements. If you can get it at a good price, under market, you finance in the improvements and you're where it would be if it was a brand new house. So what kind of questions can I answer?
Very interesting question, I think. I've had at my house for a long time. And never, till the last 3 years, have I had an agent call and ask if I was interested in selling. I am getting so tired of that the real estate, anybody that says they're with real estate, I think about what a crooked deal it is. And that's not fair. I mean, but I bet I have at least 3 calls sometimes 3 calls a day.
Right.
And first of all, I ask them, how do they know? And they won't answer.
Well, you know what, Art? They look at your age and where you live, and they probably on the internet say, look, there's something.
Well,
Sure it is.
that's part of it.
That's part of it, I'm sure.
So here's kind of the whole story on that. So again, we start with the knowledge that there's an extreme lack of inventory in the market. So St. Louis area alone, just in the St. Louis MSA, there are over 14,000 realtors. 14,000. And I will tell you, and I've said for many years, most of them aren't very good. And I say that, and I'm pretty blunt about things, but I say that because I've worked with many. A lot of them are part-time, a lot of them are jumping in, they think it's an easy thing. And I refer to realtors who are full-time people who I know, if my daughter was buying a home, which she is, she's not in town here, would I put them with that agent? Was that agent one that's going to walk in, see something wrong and say, you're not buying this house? But again, a side note. So there's a lot of them out there scrambling. And while real estate and the real estate market has been booming, there's a lot of realtors that haven't made a lot of money in the last year because there's not enough houses to sell. And they have a lot of buyers who are walking around making offers on houses that they're not getting. They're getting outbid left and right. And so people stay in the market for a while, they get frustrated and they leave. So those realtors don't make any money unless they sell a house. So that's part of the reason you get so many calls. The reason they're targeting you is there are now apps that somebody can get on their phone that it has nothing to do with your age. It has to do with the public record is how long have you had a mortgage, or if you even have a mortgage now. And these apps predict how, knowing that the average person is in a house for about 7.5 years. That's the average statistic. They look at it and they predict, hey, how long have you had your mortgage? How long have you been in the house? And based on that and several other things, are you more likely than somebody else to be moving? Well, you're probably way overdue. So you're a target.
I've shortened the conversation because when they say are you interested in selling? I said, yes, I'm starting with $500,000.
I do the same thing.
That's it.
The other thing you can always do is say, well, I'll tell you what, give me your home number and I'll call you later. I'm gonna think about it. But
We had home sale 2 years ago, I did sell in the first machine realtor. Then I got all this call from, particularly elderly, we can sell your house. Why didn't you bring somebody else?
Yeah.
So great.
And it changes. The other thing you're seeing a lot of is people breaking off from the bigger companies out there, Coldwell Banker, Gunmaker, Keller Williams, starting their own brokers because you don't need the sign in the yard right now to sell a house. You just put any sign in the yard or even put it on the internet that is for sale and it's selling in most cases. Now that'll change. That'll change when things slow down. Then the big names become more important again, like anything else, that, you know, when houses start sitting and the average in most markets is about 40 days or more, you know, just for a house to sit on the market before it sells. Now it's about 10 days. And that's skewed by some of the houses that are sitting for a lot longer. A lot of houses don't ever make it on the market.
So pre-pandemic, this was February 19th, a good friend of ours, Tim Kelly, the member of Rotary, was an agent. My aunt had passed away and I was executive of selling the house. We signed the papers on February 26th. We leave for London on February 27th.
Right.
We land in London and we find a place to go eat something. And I was able to check email. So however many hours it's been, but it has not been more than 1 day.
Right.
And I said, shit, really? And I gave phone to Mary, and she said, already? We had a firm offer on the house in less than 24 hours.
Right.
It wasn't independent. It was not through one of the big boys, you know,
Right.
as you said. And this was pre-pandemic. Now we got, I think, I want to say it was like 5,000 or 8,000 under what we were asking, which was fine as far as we were concerned.
Right.
And the guy was starting to, well, what about this? What about this? And Jim finally said, I got 4 of the buyers. If your guy doesn't want it, just let us know and we're going over there. And the house sold just that.
Well, and one of the things that is now being a part of a lot of contracts, again, realtors are trying to get real creative on trying to make their clients' offers look better than anybody else's. One of the main things they're doing now that I see, among other things, the escalation clauses and all that, but they're also writing in, my buyer will not ask for any repairs under $2,000 worth of, you know, if a furnace is bad, we're gonna ask for that to be replaced. We're not gonna nickel and dime you on stuff, which is probably a good strategy because it somewhat protects that buyer. Where if the air conditioning's bad, if the furnace is bad, you know, if the hot water, now, I mean, hot water heater would not fit into that, but I mean, if the major thing, the crack in the foundation, you're still pretty covered. But, you know, that's one thing. But the lack of inventory was at least 12 months prior to the pandemic. It was there. One of the reasons you see houses selling before they even go on the market, and this is actually a violation of the Board of Realtors' own rules and laws, is especially companies that are big, they will take a property, they'll put it on their internal website, show it to just their agents for a week or 10 days prior to anybody else seeing it. When a property goes on, is listed, what it means is it goes on what's called a multi-list system, which all agents have access to. And actually now most people have access to through a bunch of these different Zillow and places like that. And they see it, but you'll have offers waiting in line the day it goes on the market, coming soon, and they'll say, well, we're cutting off offers the Sunday it goes on that at 5 o'clock that day. You know, one of the bigger things, and I'll wrap this up, but one of the bigger things that I see as an issue that never got addressed in 07, 08, was a lot of legislation that came out to deal with lenders and some of the things that were going on there. Realtors are still legally allowed to represent both the buyer and seller in a transaction. Should not be legal. Should not be legal, but it is. Always has. Yeah, it's like walking in a courtroom and having one attorney represent both parties. And it's a conflict of interest, but it can happen. And it does happen, and that's what a realtor wants. Because when you sell, you negotiate with that realtor the commission rate. In the St. Louis area now, it's anywhere between about 3% and it used to be as high as 7%. That commission rate is paid out by the seller at closing to however many agents are involved. If there's one agent, they get it coming down.
It's coming down to 3 now.
Well, there's actually 1% discount brokers out there. So, yeah, oh, yeah, and that's the competition. They're all trying to get the listing.
Steve, there's one thing that I heard is coming now, they're buying their home, taking care of all of it, and you pay rent in it, you don't move.
Right. Yeah, there are companies out there who are buying things sight unseen and hoping to flip them and sitting on them. So there's companies doing that. And what they're doing is presenting a buyer as a cash buyer. So one of the things I want to touch on, I'll think about it after I'm done.
You said rental prices are exceeding.
Yeah.
Right, so if someone wanted, they may move next to their child or whatever, that this would be the time to do that trade and keep their home as a rental, depending upon the neighborhood or whatever.
If you can financially qualify for both payments, sure, absolutely. Yeah, it's a great time to do that, as long as you don't mind being the landlord for a while and getting those calls to fix the furnace.
My brother lives in an area where he got a ring, and all of a sudden he gets reports about shootings in the neighborhood. And his son's got a house next to him.
Right.
He's already got some rental property, so he's got a little experience from the area.
Right.
Right. I can't believe, I just was amazed to hear rental going higher.
Yeah, oh yeah, and you know, it's always made more sense to buy versus rent because of the equity you build and because of a lot of things. But now when you actually are comparing, you're paying more for that rental and there's always been a little disparity. It's growing, is the point.
I got a question. You got all these moving parts, you got the low interest rates, you got secondary limit. Where's the commission for the loan officer? Where's that come?
So loan officers, in most cases, not everyone, there are some lenders out there that pay their loan officers a small base salary and then they make commission on the loan. So when a lender does a loan, it is then packaged with other mortgages and sold in the secondary market, called a mortgage-backed security. But that lender, in many cases, either retains the servicing on that loan or sells it to another company, a bigger company that services the loan. In other words, you send your payment to me when I do the loan, or we sell that to another company who you send. They receive what's called a servicing value. In other words, the secondary market pays them to service that loan. That's the value on the loan for that lender, and that's what the commission is paid out. So there's not extra charge to the borrower. It's literally servicing value. So it's like an FHA loan, the servicing value is higher than a conventional loan, but they're also riskier loan. So that's where a loan officer is paid out of. Okay. Used to be that they also charged extra points and made what's called overage. That's no longer.
That'd be expensive to pay out of that.
Yeah, well, the problem is buyers never really knew what they were getting and they couldn't compare because you look at the interest rate charged on a loan, the best way to compare should be the annual percentage rate, the APR, which is different than the actual rate. Actual rate is what you pay on the loan. Annual percentage rate looks at the interest you pay and the cost you pay to get that loan. The cost of the credit, puts it together, and it shows you on an annual rate how to compare loan to loan. The problem is that there's no one enforcing what some lenders put into that number. There is a standard equation, what should be included, but some lenders say, well, this doesn't count and this doesn't count, so their APR looks better than what it actually is. So the best advice you can give people is don't just look at interest rate, look at the cost that the lender is going to charge you. Some things are standard, the cost of setting up your escrow account, paying your mortgage, your homeowner's insurance. That's different than what a lender is going to charge you, but lenders have fixed fees. Tell people, make sure you look at those and the interest rate, because that's what you really got to compare. Okay. So if you have any further questions, call me anytime. What I try to do is be a resource for everybody I network with to help them and help their businesses and their clients. So happy to have you reach out anytime. You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Tom, we got a drawing over there?
We do.
Yeah.
Tom's been selling tickets like a.
So, cool. Winning ticket is 011.
No kid.
Did you put your opinion?
013. I was afraid you were gonna have to do that.
011, who's got 011?
As well. And he has it.
We'll be here another 30 minutes.
It's rude.
It's rude.
Oh, yeah.
No, not
I'm on
rude.
4.
What?
I'm on 4.
Okay, all right, well, we're gonna go again.
Yeah.
All right. Pull it. Pull your own.
11.
Oh, there's. Did Todd Rose
Still not
get
here.
back in there?
Nothing up my sleeve.
16.
Okay, that's Dr. Lou, Tom Lindsay, okay, I have here, I'm gonna call, this is for Dr. Lou. He'll probably will.
If you pull it up, you can put it back.
Oh, you lost.
We were
Right,
still
so-
recording, were we? Hey, man, can I throw in one more point? I just realized what I was adding to a point. I'm talking about that app that is out there that lets people predict based on who wants to sell. People have it on their phone, and in most cases, they're actually driving up and down your street, and they can type in an address or a range of, or just a street, and get it all on their phone as they're driving up and down streets, and say, okay, this guy has been in the house for X amount of years and mortgage, and so more often not, when they're calling, they're close, which is a little unsettling.
You should look out the window and go.
At this point, most of them are, they're long way away.
Yeah.
I want to mention one thing that's a little offbeat, but if you're starting to get text or email, do not reply to them because that tells them they got a valid number. So if you're getting that, just go ahead and delete it. I don't mean you got a place, but I used to reply to these texts and say, you've got the wrong number or whatever. Then all of a sudden I remember the fraud thing that I read. You're just validating your email or validating your text or your phone number, and that's only going to increase. the amount of calling.
Yeah, I don't say yes.
Yeah.
Just a reminder, we're not meeting next week. It's this Wednesday, and we're not gonna meet next week. And also, we'll be here 2 weeks from now, and then 3 weeks from now, we're not gonna be here. We're gonna be at R12.
Where is that?
It's the old manor house at Woodson and King.
In the Overland.
You know, where
It's on that west end of that. Opposite McDonald's, west end.
Those are the woods.
Yeah.
I'm
I
sure we'll
mean,
have-
the Woodson Road entrance, you're right there.
They got signage out, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm sure we'll have the address in the.
It will be.
Everyone, Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.